In a land forgotten by time, nestled between rolling hills that touched the sky, there was a small village. This village knew no other world, for there were no other villages for many miles around. It was a world unto itself, complete and content. Its lifeblood was a wide, gentle river that flowed from the mountains, a source of water, food, and joy for all who lived there. On the very edge of this village, in a small hut made of river stones and sturdy wood, lived an old man. He had seen many seasons come and go, and his face was a map of all the suns and moons he had witnessed. The villagers saw him as a strange but harmless part of their landscape, like an ancient gnarled tree. The old man lived a simple life. He spoke more to the river than to the people. He understood its moods, its whispers, and its silence. He believed that everything in the universe was connected, a single soul speaking in many tongues. The flight of a bird, the rustle of the leaves, the path of the stars, all were signs for those who knew how to read them. He spent his days in quiet contemplation, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath his feet. He sought not wealth or power, but understanding. And in his solitude he found a deep peace that the bustling villagers, with their daily worries and loud laughter, could not comprehend. He was alone, but he was not yet lonely. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, the old man sat by the river's edge. A profound stillness fell over the world, a silence so deep it felt like a message. He closed his eyes and listened not with his ears but with his heart. A vision, clear as the river water before him, came to him. He saw a great dark rain falling from the heavens, a rain that would not cleanse but corrupt. This rain would seep into the earth and poison the river, turning its life-giving waters into a source of madness. Anyone who drank from it would lose their way, their minds clouded by a joyful insanity, forgetting who they were. The revelation settled upon him not with fear, but with a heavy sense of duty. He knew what he had to do. His heart, which had been at peace, now carried a burden. He looked at the village, at the smoke curling from the chimneys, and he felt a pang of love for the people who lived there. They were simple people, living simple lives, and they did not know the language of the universe as he did. They would not understand his vision. They would only see an old man speaking of strange things, but he had to try. For what is wisdom if it is not shared to protect the ones you care for, even if they do not know you care? The next morning, the old man walked into the village square. It was a rare sight, and people stopped their chores to stare. He stood tall, his eyes holding the weight of his vision. "A great rain is coming," he announced, his voice clear and steady. "Do not be deceived by its waters. It will carry a sickness for the mind. It will poison our river. Anyone who drinks from the river after this rain will become mad." He spoke with the certainty of a man who has seen the truth. He implored them to listen, to trust in the wisdom that age and solitude had granted him. He was a part of their world, and he wished only to protect it from a fate it could not see. The villagers listened for a moment, and then a ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. They saw not a prophet, but a lonely old man whose mind had finally been lost to the silence. "The river is our mother," one man shouted. "It has always given us life." A woman added, "He spends too much time alone. The solitude has made him strange." They mocked his words, turning his earnest warning into a joke. They pointed at him and whispered, seeing his concern as foolishness. They could not believe that their river, their constant and faithful companion, could ever betray them. The world they knew was safe, and his words were a threat to that safety. Undeterred by their scorn, the old man repeated his warning. "I beg you," he said, his voice softer now, filled with a gentle plea. "The world speaks in signs. I have learned to read them. This is not a guess, it is a certainty. The river will change, and you will change with it if you drink its water." He looked into their faces, searching for a glimmer of understanding, a flicker of belief, but he found only pity and amusement. They saw him as a relic of a forgotten time, a storyteller whose tales had become too dark. They patted him on the shoulder and told him to go home and rest, to leave the worrying to younger, sounder minds. With a heavy heart, the old man turned away from the village square. He had delivered his message. He had fulfilled his duty to the soul of the world. Now, he had a duty to himself. He would not be able to save them from their own disbelief. He walked back to his hut by the river, the sound of their laughter following him like a sad echo. He gathered every pot, every jar, every vessel he owned. He went to the river, to the pure water that still flowed, and he began to collect it, storing it carefully inside his small home. He would save what he could, a small island of sanity in the world that was to come. Days turned into a week, and the old man's prophecy seemed like nothing more than a forgotten dream. The sun shone, the river flowed, and the villagers continued their lives, their laughter echoing with the memory of the old man's foolish warning. They would sometimes look towards his hut and shake their heads, a mix of pity and mockery in their eyes. The old man remained inside, watching and waiting. He drank his stored water sparingly, knowing it had to last. He felt the world holding its breath, waiting for the moment of change that only he seemed to anticipate. The sky remained clear, and the villagers grew more confident in their own wisdom. Then one evening, the sky turned a strange shade of gray. Dark, heavy clouds gathered as if from nowhere, swallowing the setting sun. The promised rain began to fall. It was not a gentle, cleansing rain. It was a relentless downpour, a deluge that beat against the earth with a furious energy. The villagers cheered, celebrating the end of the dry spell. They danced in the rain, letting the strange water wash over them. The river swelled, its clear waters turning murky and dark as it greedily drank the downpour. The old man watched from his window, his heart aching with a sorrowful certainty. The prophecy was coming true. The next morning the sun returned, but the world had changed forever. The villagers, thirsty from their celebrations, ran to the river to drink. They cupped their hands and drank deeply from the swollen, muddy waters. One by one, a strange light entered their eyes. A joyous, unthinking madness took hold. They began to speak in nonsense, to laugh without reason, to chase butterflies with the seriousness of hunters, and to declare that the trees were their long-lost brothers. They had all gone mad, just as the old man had foretold. But in their madness, they were not sad. They were euphoric, united in a new, incomprehensible reality. The old man watched from a distance, a lone figure of sanity in a world gone wild. He saw the baker trying to bake bread with mud, and the weaver making clothes from spider webs. They were all happy, lost in their shared delusion. They had no memory of their previous lives, no understanding of what they had lost. They had simply become different. The old man stayed in his hut, drinking his pure water, his mind clear and sharp. He was safe from the madness. He was the keeper of reason. But as he looked out at the joyful, insane village, a new and unfamiliar feeling began to creep into his heart. Days turned into weeks, and the old man's existence became a silent vigil. He was the only one who remembered the world as it was. He was the only one who understood what had been lost. He was sane, but his sanity was a cage. Every day he watched the villagers. They danced and sang their nonsensical songs. They spoke a language of joyful madness that he could not understand. They were a community, a tribe bound by their shared perception of the world. They were never alone. When one of them fell, another would help them up, laughing. Their madness had not made them cruel, it had simply made them different. The old man had always been alone, but he had never felt lonely. His solitude had been a choice, a path to wisdom and peace. But now, his solitude was a prison. He was the only person left of his kind. His wisdom was useless, for there was no one to share it with. His memories were a burden, for there was no one to remember with him. The silence in his hut was no longer peaceful. It was a deafening roar of isolation. He looked at his reflection in the clear water he had saved and saw a stranger, a ghost in a world that had moved on without him. He began to yearn for connection, for the simple touch of another person, for a shared laugh, even if it made no sense. He watched the villagers gather by the river, their faces lit with a strange, happy glow. They were not his people anymore, but they were the only people there were. His sanity had become the source of his deepest suffering. What good was it to be right if you were all alone? What good was a clear mind in a world where clarity was the ultimate form of madness? He looked at his dwindling supply of pure water, and then at the flowing, poisoned river. One morning, the old man made a choice. He walked out of his hut, leaving his jars of clear water behind. He walked to the river's edge where the mad villagers were singing to the fish. They paused and smiled at him, their eyes empty of judgment. He knelt down, just as they did. He looked at the murky water, the source of their insanity and their joy. He saw his own lonely face reflected in it. Then with a steady hand, he cupped the river water and brought it to his lips. He drank deeply, choosing to lose himself so that he might finally be found. He chose to be mad, so that he would no longer be alone.